Welcome to Raw and Real. In the hot seat today is David Higgins, who for the past 15 years has been stitching together deals as boss of Duco Events. David, mate, thank you for joining us. Over the years, you have taken some pretty big gambles. How do you live with yourself? How do you do it?
Yeah, look, you get used to it. Like you're constantly on a knife edge of risk. Like a business like boxing, for example, is a global enterprise, and it's full of psychopaths in the ring and outside the ring. On the commercial side, there's a lot of people that are trying to do each other in. So you need to have your eyes wide open, and you need to. It's not for the faint-hearted. So what Joseph Parker's achieved at 26 is remarkable, and we're still standing, and it's been a hell of a ride.
Mate, one of the things that I like about you and particularly respect about you is that you see the importance of a win-win, and not enough people in my books in business really have an appreciation for that. Tell us a little bit more about the benefits of and the techniques of your win-win deal making.
That's a very good point. And to make an event happen in sport, like say the NRL Auckland Nines or the Black Clash, we have some current and former All Blacks playing current and former Black Cap cricketers in Hagley. It's a new annual stadium event we've created. To make an event like that happen is actually very difficult because you're needing the blessing, if you like, of the New Zealand Rugby Union, New Zealand Cricket, the players' associations, the players themselves. And so you can't make an event like that happen if you're the only winner. You basically have to draw up on a whiteboard everyone that can say no to your idea and figure out how you give them a win. And so you've got to get the blessing of the national bodies, the association. And if you create a model where everyone wins, then no one's going to say no. And that's how you get an event like the NRL Nines or the Black Clash off the ground.
Tell me a little bit about what you're doing with Joseph. I mean, it's not just about boxing, is it?
Yeah, well, look, Joseph boxing is a business, and he has a very good head on his shoulders. He's a smart guy. A lot of people say, is he well looked after? He's looking after his money. He won't end up broke, that kind of thing. It's a little bit patronising. There seems to be an assumption that if, you're a boxer, that you're stupid. And you shouldn't need advice if you've got a good head on your shoulders. So Joseph's got a very good head on his shoulders. He's got a great commercial structure behind him, a trust set up, advised by PricewaterhouseCoopers. I think he's involved with Hobson Wealth Management. But he himself has a good head, so he's set up for life already. But his goal is to box on for another 4 years and hopefully have another shot at the world title and hopefully win it and unify it. But in terms of financial security, that's already taken care of. So I don't know what he'll do when he retires. He's expressed an interest in joining me in promotion and events, and he'd be good at it.
The benefit of you working with somebody like Joseph is he opens the door to other people that you can connect with and put a deal together with.
Yeah, so a guy like Joseph, who's got a worldwide following, has connections. And so it can come in useful. So if we have an idea and we want to reach someone, Joseph can connect to that person and get a better cut through. It's a win-win. So Joseph can help monetize his connections. And so we're looking at inviting a few people down to New Zealand to do and Australia to do some event work, and Joseph's a good intermediary for that.
So you've, 15 years, you had a period of time there, which I know is a chapter that you're pleased to have behind you, but with Dean Lonergan. What did you learn out of that experience?
Oh, look, I don't have regrets. I think, in that time with that business partner, we created some quite remarkable things. The NRL Auckland Nines was a concept that was turned into a reality and became New Zealand's biggest event. And, we won the heavyweight world title with Joseph Parker. But, things run their course. And so right now it's I'm the major shareholder in Duco, and we have a woman, Rachel Carroll, who's also a shareholder, and she's the chief executive of the company based in Melbourne. And it's just a new chapter. And, it's exciting. We've got a lot of new big ideas in the pipeline.
You're a bit of a genius, and I think people that maybe take you too lightly don't understand your motivation and the reason that you do certain things. Like I saw you put that big fight together, and the way that you did that, you came across as a madman. I mean, talk me through that.
Well, look, putting together that was the biggest sporting contract ever negotiated for one-off in the history of New Zealand. It was probably a $50 million joint venture, and it doesn't fall out of the sky. It was a concept that had to be thought about, strategized, and created in a very methodical, step-by-step way. And boxing at that level is cutting edge is investment banking on Wall Street. You're dealing in multi-million dollar sums of money with some quite ruthless people at times. And so, if Fonterra, for example, are going to buy a acquisition in China, say for $50 million, they'll quietly do due diligence behind the scenes, probably with Boston Consulting or McKinsey for a year, studying the acquisition, and then quietly it'll all be contracted behind the scenes and then announced. Now, people wonder why you end up getting a larger-than-life profile in boxing, because if you think about it, when I'm putting together that Anthony Joshua-Joseph Parker fight, it's like the Fonterra deal, except it's done in the glare of the public eye, all through the media. The negotiations are conducted publicly in the space of 2 months. So you've got a $50 million intercontinental joint venture deal negotiated in the glare of the media in only 2 months' time between two companies who've never before worked together. So the issues of trust and risk and the contracts for those deals are as complicated as merger and acquisition contracts, because you're dealing with vast sums of money. We're setting up an escrow account in the UK, so MI6 had to vet us under UK money laundering laws. So it's a very unusual business, boxing, if you think about it, where you're in a position of making a deal that size publicly, where the stakes are very high. There's physical risk to the boxers, but the commercial risks abound. There's officiating. There's that's why boxing promoters end up getting this larger-than-life persona like Bob Arum or Don King. You sort of can't help it. So, although it might appear madness, I can tell the listeners it ain't for the faint-hearted, and you have to really know what you're doing to survive and succeed commercially in that business.
Not only were you trying to sell something very difficult, they weren't interested. They really, you didn't have a good enough package. You didn't have a good enough fighter. You really messed with their heads.
Yeah. So I asked Eddie Hearn, Anthony Joshua's promoter, can we have a fight with Anthony Joshua? And he said, no, probably not. No one's really interested in the UK. Joseph Parker doesn't have enough of profile in the UK, and no one's really calling for the event. So I thought, all right, how do we fix that? And so it was a calculated strategy to attack, for want of a better word, Anthony Joshua's glass jaw. And that sort of killed a few birds with one stone. One, it outraged the Joshua fans, and so they started baying, saying, fight Parker, teach a guy a lesson. Who is this guy? Two, it raised Joseph's profile in the UK to the point we were being covered in all the major media outlets in the UK. So about 6 weeks in, then Eddie Hearn, the Joshua promoter, is saying, David, we're getting interested now. Keep doing what you're doing. And so eventually they came to the negotiating table, so it worked a charm, and then they were offering us quite a small cut. So we just continued baiting them until our percentage share of the pie grew to the point that everyone made a deal, and it made history. It set Joseph Parker up for life financially, and it was, to see 80,000 people in a stadium around a boxing ring was surreal.
How did it make you feel when you were out there? And I know you weren't the fighter, but do you give yourself a moment to consider what it is that you've created, and how does it feel when you give yourself that moment?
It's a good question. It's a creative. So I'm not money driven. Like when a sculptor creates a sculpture or painter a painting, to think of an idea in your head for a business or an event. And sometimes a very tricky thing to pull off, like, say, the Black Clash cricket rugby event in Christchurch or that world title fight for Joe. Then you basically sort of whiteboard it in your head. looks very difficult, but what are the steps I need to take to make this happen? Who do I need to cut in? Who do I need to give a win? Who do I need to get inside? And then you write up step 1 to 10, and you put one step in front of the other. You take those steps, and halfway along, suddenly it's looking like it could actually happen. And then, so when it does happen, there's a feeling of satisfaction. Like
but you've always believed it was going to
something.
happen, and that's what got you there in the first place. Are you sometimes surprised?
When the ones that have been big successes, I've known at the beginning. It's strange. It's almost like an intuitive gut feel where you can see into the future and you know that the Nines or the Blacklash or Parker, like I felt he was going to become world champion when I first signed him. I told him, so I could feel it. Weird. And then sometimes when I haven't been as successful, I haven't had that same gut feeling. So I think event promotion's a bit of a judgment business in a way. It's about picking winners because everyone has ideas. So the hard bit isn't the idea, it's executing and turning it into a reality. And in my business, you have to pick the right ones to back because otherwise you'll be bankrupt.
When you were doing a deal with Eden Park, you managed to do something quite unique with the alcohol and the food. You were trying to make the package work.
So without giving too much away, it's very tough to get sponsorship these days, and most sporting organisations will know that sponsorship budgets are being cut, head offices are moving to Australia, so to get the sponsorship dollar is hard. And so we needed a major food and beverage partner. So rather than pitch for cash, I pitched for product. And then I negotiated with the venue that they had to buy the product from me. So effectively, I turned the product into cash, and they hadn't. I don't think they'd done a deal like that before. So it was quite a good, innovative deal that worked, and everyone won. For the food and beverage provider, their cost of production was a lot lower, so they ended up getting quite a big sponsorship for a bit of product for a very good value price. I then monetised it at full value, and it didn't cost the venue anything either, so it was a three-way win.
It's clearly all about putting a spin and a different sort of package around a deal. Tell us a little bit more about some of the other innovative approaches you've taken.
Sir Richard Branson. So he's done 2 public events in New Zealand, and I've promoted or owned both those events. So the first event was in 2011. Now, my goal in my 20s was to buy my mum a house. So I worked really hard, really driven. And back then I hadn't really made any money yet. And various organisation people had always said, hey, why don't we do a Richard Branson event in New Zealand? But it never happened. So I thought, what are the reasons why Richard Branson wouldn't do an event here? One is people will either specify the date, and that speaker, Branson or Obama, won't be available on the date. So you don't tell them the date. You say to them, what is the date? They tell you the date. That takes away that problem. And the second is people would offer no fee or a fee. So again, go the other way. I said, what is the fee? So I did a letter to Branson's representatives. I said, we'd like to host you in New Zealand. Can you please give us a date and a fee? Now, the fee was astronomical, but my hunch was correct that he'd come during Rugby World Cup final. So I timed the event on the Thursday before Rugby World Cup final. The fee was big, but I had a full year to organise it. And time's money. The longer the lead time, the more chance of success. If you're rushing things on short lead time, your chance of losing money or not succeeding are obviously a lot higher. So given the full year, I managed to get a media partner on board who would receive exclusive interviews with Richard Branson Hospitality in return for media. I then pitched the media to a major bank who became the naming sponsor. So effectively the bank's buying a big chunk of media.
So you didn't use that media to promote the event, the name was going to do
it. Yeah, it sold out on email. And so effectively the costs of the event were covered by sponsorship before I sold a ticket. And then the tickets were all $1,000 each or more. So paid for my mum's house, that one event. And so it was, it's quite, I guess, it's a feeling of satisfaction when you conceptualise how to do it and then execute it and then it happens. It's quite satisfaction.
And again, it's a win-win. Everybody wins.
Yeah, so Branson got a big chunk of cash and got to see the Rugby World Cup final. The paying punters got to listen to Richard Branson's views on climate change and the world and technology, etc. I also raised $400,000 for the Outward Bound charity. So through that event, I was able to donate about $380,000 to Outward Bound charity. The bank had Sir Richard Branson in their corporate box at the Rugby World Cup final, and the media company got their interview with Richard Branson. So
the bank got the advertising.
And the New Zealand taxpayer got some tax revenue off me. It keeps my staff in a job. So yes, everyone won.
What's the? You must have some sort of indication, rolling figure of the money that you've raised for charity over the 15 years that you've been going.
Yeah, millions. And I've never been employed by a charity or paid a cent by a charity. So there's a bit of misconception around the business model for those charity events. It's not a case of the charity paying us. It's the other way round. I'm running a commercial event. I'm taking the risk. I'm running fundraising, and then I'm donating the money to the charity. So I've only had one or two events that haven't made money. But I've had occasions where I've paid a charity a six-figure donation whilst I've lost a six-figure amount on the other side of the ledger, and so it's a hiding to nothing sometimes. So I'm quite picky now. Like I'm chasing bigger sporting events and just getting into some music stuff. But I'll still do the odd charity fundraising event, but I'll be quite picky about it. It's got to be quite interesting or quite a big name.
Your best lesson in business?
There's been a lot of lessons, but I think to trust your gut instinct. For me, that if I look back, the big successes have always had an instinct or knowingness about them, and where I've gone wrong, I've felt that. So for me, trusting my instincts is important.
To become a subscriber, head to nbr.co.nz/subscriptions and join NBR today.